Welcome, everybody. I'll just give everybody a minute here. Blair, Kevin, and Paul, are you able to share your videos on the stage?
I should be able to share my camera should be on, Jose. Am I visible to you?
I don't see you.
Just a second here. I'm gonna try this one more time. There we go.
Okay, there we go. And then Paul, are you able to share your screen? Maybe we just have to go in there and give him permission individually.
I was having a few people show up at a table and knock, and they would pop into existence, and then their screens would blink off on me. So I didn't know if it was my lighting or my Kevin's wearing a tie. Maybe I didn't have a tie. I'm not sure why people would pop in and then not. Now I feel maybe that's why. Yeah, that's why.
I thought I'd throw on a tie for the
awesome.
day just because.
Looks great. Thanks for doing this, Kevin.
My pleasure. Happy
really
to do
appreciate it. Yeah. A lot of us have been in all these crazy platforms for the last little while. I've been in 5 or 6 different ones just the last 2 days. So I'm thinking now, back in my undergrad, I should have taken Spanish, Italian, German, and Japanese. It can be done. I think a person can learn multiple languages in short order.
Yeah, there's no question. It's just it's a world of just, we'll call it adaptability these days.
Are you what's your preferred platform for you to reach out to industry or in-house with Sturgess, Kevin?
We usually use Teams.
Yeah.
That's our kind of standard go-to because we're on Office 365, and so
yeah,
pretty standard. I would say Zoom is probably the next most often we use, but primarily Teams.
Cool.
I guess that's perfect. Mr. Norris?
Jose, I don't know if you fixed it or I did, but I'm in, so thank you.
You're in. That's all that matters.
That's right, buddy. Hi, Alvin.
And then,
hey, Paul.
Between Amanda, Alvin, and Patty, I'll just have you guys continue to monitor the lobby and admitting people in. But we can get started and kick off our industry night now. So welcome, everybody. My name is Jose Monroy, and I am one of your ATSA student presidents. It is my pleasure to welcome all students, industry, and faculty to our annual Architectural Technologies Industry Night. Thank you to all student volunteers, faculty, and industry sponsors for helping to make this event happen. Without you guys, we would not be here, so thank you to all of you involved. After myself and some ATSA members share a few words right here, the event will begin with a brief address from our academic chair, Blair Marsden, which you can see on the screen now, followed by our keynote speaker, Kevin Harrison, principal at Sturgess. We will then move into the networking portion of the evening. Halfway through the networking portion of the evening, we will take a brief 5-minute break and resume our event until 5:30. You will receive a notification to indicate the 5-minute intermission. So before we get started, I'd just like to address a couple of housekeeping items. You'll notice that the event view will change to a floor plan view with tables and chairs when we begin. Some of the industry partners that were admitted ahead of everybody would have already seen this. We ask that all industry partners ensure that at least one company representative stays at each one of your tables at all times. If you did invite more people than you have tables, the additional people, industry folk, are able to wander around and mingle and network amongst the other tables as well. We also have, actually, let me just go back to my script here. We also ask that students avoid staying at one single industry table for the entirety of the event. Please move amongst all tables to ensure everybody gets an opportunity to engage with our industry partners. If you are awaiting to speak with an industry partners, please use the side tables to chat with your colleagues until a space opens up. There are also open tables on level 2, which can be accessed on the left side of your screen when we enter the networking part of this event. And you'll notice that your screen actually will show a floor plan for which you can then move around. And finally, we ask that all attendees use headphones if you have them available to avoid any feedback issues. If anybody is experiencing technical issues, make sure that you're logging into Remo from a desktop computer or laptop. Tablets are not supported by Remo at this time. Also make sure to close any other softwares that may use your webcam or microphone, as this may cause some connection issues as well. And also finally, please note that the event platform will close promptly at 5:30 p.m. So make sure to wrap up all conversations prior to this time, as it will just kind of close on us and shut us out. Thank you to all, and I will now pass it over to ATSA Vice President Alvin Lamb.
Hey everyone, I'd also like to thank everyone for coming here today. It's definitely been challenging figuring out how to plan this online, but I think the fact that we're all here shows how we've been able to overcome these challenging times and be able to find creative solutions to adapt to this online environment. And I just hope everyone here gets a chance to network with energy members and build connections. I'll pass it over to Amanda.
Hi, I just want to say congratulations to everybody for making this far. I'm really happy that we have so many people in here. And even though we started organizing this event on the dark, since this is our first online event, thanks to all ATSA members who helped make it happen, I know that it will be great. I feel it. And I hope everyone will take the most of it. And I will pass it over to Blair Marsden, our academic chair, to share some words with us. Thank you.
That's awesome. You know what, Jose, Alvin, and Amanda, because you're thanking everyone, it feels like sort of an Academy Awards. And I don't want to thank too much, but I just want to let you three know and all the ATSA members know, and it looks like we're 100 now live in Remo. To the folks that haven't met the ATSA people before, and there's a lot of them, particularly industry out there, I just want you three on, and to all the ATSA members I'm not meeting, industry should know you're probably the most potent student association on the SAIT campus. You folks are crazy good. You're crazy organized. You're arguably more professional and organized than we are on this side sometimes. So I know the thanking sucks sometimes, but you folks are really cool. So Amanda, your energy is contagious. Thank you for that. And you, at least you three need to hear that. You're amazing people already. So to everyone, thanks for joining us at 100 Strong on Remo on this platform. I hope you take advantage of the floors and the rooms and knocking on the doors and the tables and learning how to mingle either as a picture or font, however you're representing yourselves. I'll try and move around as much as possible. We have some great faculty members here. They'll be circulating around. I see Cheryl Fryers is around. I know our dean is here, Reva Bond Ramsden. Look for those people. Paul Norris is going to be up. So first and foremost, thanks for supporting the students. To those industry members, thank you so much. This is really, really cool. And there's nothing else to really do but jump into it. I don't think. I think it's just time to mingle and get going. We have a distinguished guest and out of a really cool and distinguished firm that's been around Calgary for a long time. And I'm going to ask Paul Norris to bring Kevin Harrison on board. Paul, if you don't mind, just introducing Kevin, and I'm going to be around. Thank you again, and you folks have a wonderful evening. And I'll just head this way, Jose.
Thanks, Blair. Blair is supposed to talk for 15 minutes, and in that time, I was going to write my speech.
No.
So my speech is half written. I'm just kidding. So I get 5 minutes. It probably won't take 5 minutes, but if you know me, I probably will. Huge thanks for the opportunity. I got emailed, I think earlier this week, would you like to introduce Kevin? And my first response as an instructor was to say, this is about you guys. You guys should introduce him. And then I think it was Jose said, oh, Blair thought it'd be a good idea. So I said, I think that's a great idea. I would love to do it. So I'm really honored that I get to do this. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I've written this down too. I wrote down before Blair said it. I'm so proud of this student association. I'm not even the student association, so proud of our students. you guys are world beaters. I was a member of ATSA. I don't think we were called ATSA back in the day, but in 1998, I was a member of ATSA, and I think I was the social coordinator. So I essentially planned hockey pools and pub nights. And if you know me, that sort of makes a little bit of sense. And I'm not sure if Kevin was on it or not. Maybe he was. If you don't know me, my name is Paul Norris. I teach mostly in the first year. So a few of the first year students I haven't seen, and I haven't seen a few. I didn't teach a few of you in the second year, but that's me. You might have noticed my backdrop changed. This is in honor of Kevin. So I don't know if you know how I work. I emailed him about a half hour ago and said, Kevin, I'm introducing you today. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? So I mentioned a few things. He said, oh, I'm talking about all those things already. And I said, one of your big detriments in life is that you're a Vancouver Canucks fan, right? And he said, yeah. And I said, but you're also a Penguins fan. He goes, well, I'm not a Penguins fan. I'm a Mario fan. So I went, you might recognize, I took down my Oilers jersey for a couple hours, the first place, Edmonton Oilers, for a couple hours. And this is Kevin's favorite hockey player. Kevin, you might know this. This is actually an autographed Mario picture. And this is Mario's rookie card right here too. So all in honor of my buddy, Kevin. Kevin's a friend, as you can tell. We met at SAIT in 1998. So I graduated in 99. Kevin graduated in 98. So actually we met in 1997. I didn't have many friends in the first year, still don't, but my year was a bit odd. But Kevin's year was really, really cool. There were some really cool people he went to school with, and he was very lucky to be in that year. And as you know about school is about the people you're with, and the people he was with were excellent, and they still are. So I ended up hanging out with them quite a bit. Kevin's from Nelson, BC. He's going to tell you a little bit about that. He's going to tell you, introduce him to his big orange friend, Bob. We met in 98. Like I said, I don't remember much about classes as a student. And that's not a detriment. Like, college is about what you learn, but of course it's a lot about the social aspect, and you guys will get to experience that more in the fall. But so we got to play intramural hockey together. We did a lot of social things together. And then Kevin went on to Dalhousie, went on to get his undergrad degree and grad school in Dalhousie in Halifax. If you've ever been to Halifax, you know why he went. It's an amazing school, but an even more amazing city. The real reason he went is because he couldn't get into the University of Calgary. They wouldn't actually accept him, which isn't true. Kevin wasn't the first SAIT grad to go on to university, but he was one of the first, and he's also been one of the most successful. After SAIT, do you need to go on and get a university degree? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You do not. But some people, it's a dream to do it, and it was a dream for me, and it was a dream for Kevin, and those are some of the things that ended up happening. Like I said, his year was exceptional. I don't want to. Every time I talk about Kevin, I quite often compare him to one of his best friends, Jesse Hindle, who is one of his classmates who graduated in 98 and now also runs an amazingly successful architecture firm in Calgary, just like Kevin does. And the reason I'm mentioning that is Kevin surrounded himself with people who are excellent and other people who strive to be better. And I know you guys as classmates are doing that right now too. And those relationships will continue on, and you'll continue to inspire each other, and you'll continue to make each other better. And that's what Kevin's done with some of the people he graduated with. Kevin I've had him guest lecture a few times, and he always says yes. So Kevin is swamped. He's the principal of a firm, 20 employees, something like that. And he always says yes. And I know he's busy, and I know he doesn't have the time. He's married with 2 kids and is the partner of a really successful and busy firm, but he always says yes. He's a huge champion of SAIT. Even a few years ago, we used to have a First Nation house design competition. I said, hey, Kevin, would you guys be interested in throwing something together, just something interesting? And I think he put someone on that project who worked about 2 weeks to design this thing, gave us an entire presentation and an entire poster board, and shared that with us just for our students. So that's how much he gives back. I'm also lucky, not only is Kevin my friend, but I was his mentor. When people with masters in architecture want to get registered, they need a mentor. And Kevin left his quite late and phoned me one day and said, hey, Paul, would you be my mentor? And I said, wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, but I don't plan on taking 3 years worth of documents and signing them in one day. He said, well, that's what I want you to do. So that was that. We ended up doing that together. That's about all I have for my friend. He's gonna talk more about himself and how he got to where he's gotten, and hopefully inspire a few people to be the best they can be. So huge honor for me to introduce my good friend Kevin. Have fun.
Thank you, Paul. and you know, I really appreciate this opportunity. It's I welcome it, and I'm honored that you guys would ask me to do that, or to talk to you briefly. We'll call it 45 minutes ish. And so what I thought I would do today is I'll first start by sharing my screen. And what I thought I would do today is ultimately talk about myself, where I started, how I got to where I am, and ultimately some of the work of the firm. And you know, I didn't want to talk the whole time about our work, because our work is so much more than just what it is that we do. It's, you know, you build on the history of your life and that sort of thing. And so I thought we would just start to talk. Who is KSH? Who is Kevin Scott Harrison? That's me. And then I start to talk about the firm, who is SA, and ultimately talk about what it is that we do. And so let's get into it. First and foremost, more than anything, yes, I run an architectural firm, but more than anything, I'm a husband and a father to two beautiful boys, a husband to a beautiful wife. And that means more than anything. You know, as much as you go to work and you do your thing any day of the week, this is far more important. This is a date of significance to, some might say many, some might not. August 16th, 1977. And the reason it's a date of significance marks the king of rock and roll's death. And you might be asking, what does that have to do with anything? Well, when my mom found out that Elvis died, she went into labor, and she gave birth to me the next day, August 17th, 1977, in the beautiful city of Nelson. That's where I grew up, born and raised. And as Paul mentioned, you know, there's Bob, there's the Big Orange Bridge, arguably one of the most beautiful small towns, small cities you'll find. And I really enjoyed my childhood growing up there. One of the reasons being is, fortunately, we lived on, or we still have, 17 acres. Front yard is our lake, and the backyard is the mountains. The image on the left is, well, my two boys in the Jays hats with some of their cousins, just kind of playing at the lake. The image on the right, that's the yard with the mountain in the background. Actually, that's a truck that I restored from when I was like 15 to 18. So, and that picture was taken this past summer, you know, so she's still in beauty shape. What did I do as a kid? You can see how grainy these images are, but, you know, growing up on 17 acres, I do what kids do. You know, we had horses. My grandfather had a farm, small farm, but we had horses. That's my horse. Calico is his name. The reason it was my horse is because Calico was also born in 1977. That's me on the horse. That's me bombing around on an ATV. Do what kids do. Play around in the field, or you play around in the lake. All these images are of me. I love the water. Absolutely love the lake. It's you know, bottom left image is me skiing for the first time. I was 7 at the time, and the image right above that is first time on one, and I was about 10. So I've been on skis for some time now, and every chance I get, I'm on the water. Like other kids, what do you do when you grow up in a place like Nelson? Well, you can see Bob in the background of the soccer picture. Grow up playing soccer, grow up playing ball. Interesting enough, when I first started playing ball, I was actually too young to join the league, and so my dad said, "Okay, well, I'll coach." And so he coached, and I got in a year earlier than I should have. One thing, that's me. If you can see my cursor, that's me in the bottom there. That glove, I still have that glove. Oil your gloves if you play ball. And you know, growing up playing soccer. One little tidbit, interesting note: this this girl here, friend of mine growing up, pretty successful in life. I mean, teach his own in what you judge success, but she was a full ride track scholar in the States, became a producer for Larry King Live, worked with, and she's now an Emmy Award winning producer, worked with Ryan Seacrest, all the sort of typical things you'd see in Hollywood, interesting stuff. And like soccer and hockey, well, soccer and ball, I play hockey as well. This was me at 3, see these little skates, still have them, put my boys in these skates when they first learned how to skate, and check out this flow. That's me right there. Pretty nasty stuff. But, you know, that's what we do. We have fun, we grow up, we meet friends, we build relationships, we you know, we do what we do. This coach right here just passed away just a few months ago, which is a bit of a sad note, but that's quite all right, part of life. Growing up in Nelson, my father was a contractor, and so I was always around building, always had some understanding of it in some fashion, and even at the age of 12, I started working with them, whether it's summers, pushing a wheelbarrow, whatever, filling screw holes, framing walls, whatever it might be. That's what I did, and worked up until graduated high school, and then I actually worked a full year with them. And in that time, we built this house, this red Ford, this is my old man's Ford. I know this is a winter picture, but side note, in the summer when we were framing this house, this is about a half hour from Nelson. It's in Selmo. It was so hot. The temperature on the thermometer at the house that we had went up to 50 degrees, and it blew the thermometer. It was so hot. We were working from like 6 till 2 because after 2 o'clock it was unbearable. It was just the craziest heat wave in the middle of framing, and you'd look for a square foot of shade and hide out in there for a few minutes because it was crazy hot. So, you know, there's me kind of in a bit of a nutshell growing up. After you know, working and graduating high school, I came here. As Paul mentioned, clearly this image is much different now than when I went to school, but I walk through this forecourt quite a bit, to and from Senator Burns all the time, and I think it was K-Wing if I'm not mistaken. And so spent many days in this, and as Paul mentioned, yes, school is school. School can be challenging. You can spend long hours, perhaps even all-nighters. You know, what you take most is actually the friendships you build, and you maintain them arguably for the rest of your life. And you know, so SAIT has really built a huge foundation for me, and you know, for that I'm thankful. And so you might not perhaps do this stuff now, but I thought I'd run you through. I was actually going through some old pictures of some of my SAIT work, and this is a tonal drawing I did in I can only assume it was the first semester of year 1. This graphite on paper, more tonal drawings, whether it be ink on Mylar or I don't know if you guys still do it, but the Barnes Art Supply redesign. As you can see, all hand drawing. When I was in SAIT, everything was hand drawn. It was second year we started to take an AutoCAD class, and it was AutoCAD for DOS. So put that into perspective. Nonetheless, you know, bring back some memory when I was looking through some of these photos, and it was pretty, you know, it's exciting to think about that sort of stuff. And this is one thing that Paul might actually enjoy. I came across this, and you can read the title, Legion of Doom Finally Ends Brewers Intramural Dominance. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll read a little excerpt. And it was written by Mr. Paul Norris as well. I'll read 2 little portions here. 15 members of the Brewers intramural hockey team lived a life so many elite athletes only dream of. They were a dynasty, and they were untouchable until a fateful evening in March. After compiling a 38-6 career record, the Brewers defended their 3-time campus rec hockey title last Thursday night against a group of up-and-comers, the Legion of Doom. So, it goes on to talk about what happened, and we ultimately lost in a shootout. But the last paragraph, which Paul even touched on, is important, or what I take from all of this. But the Brewers have the rest of their lives to remember when they were not a team, but a family, and the arena was not a rink, but a stage. A takeaway from our time at SAIT. Met a lot of great people. After SAIT, I started to work for a developer in town in Calgary. We did a lot of suburban housing, and this is a shot of the kind of typical work that we did. Worked there so I graduated SAIT in '98, and I started immediately thereafter. Worked for about 3 years, designing prototypes and that sort of thing. The typical work that a AT grad would do at a developer's office. And I always had in some mind, or in the back of my mind, with the history of working with my dad, coming to SAIT, I sort of always knew that I wanted to become an architect. And that's not to say that graduating SAIT is not an amazing thing, but I had always had it in the back of my mind. And so I packed up, headed out east to Dal. And again, as Paul mentioned, Halifax is a pretty amazing city. I got to really encompass the maritime culture. This is the prototypical East Coast, Peggy's Cove picture. And, when you're there, why not embrace it? And Halifax is an amazing city. The Maritimes are amazing. The people are amazing. At school, this is shots of the school. When I went there, it had just finished the renovation, this extension on the top right. And studio is studio. I for kind of the first time in my life, which is a bit different than SAIT. Most students at Dal are at the studio. The studio is open 24/7, 365. Every student gets a key to the door, and it's pretty crazy. And so you spend a lot of time there. It becomes your home away from home. Fortunately, I live just a couple blocks away, and what's really great about Halifax in particular, and even going to Dal, is I spent 4.5-ish years out there, and I lived within like a 20 to 30 block radius, everywhere on foot, except of course heading down the coast and that sort of thing. But it's a pretty amazing place. So that brings us back to Calgary. Actually, I'm going to rewind just one sec. When I was in Dal, had my first work term, my BEDS work term, Bachelor of Environmental Design. Where I met my wife, she's Calgarian, born and raised. I knew I wanted to come back to Calgary for a work term, so I knew that Sturgess Architecture was the only place I wanted to work for. So I put together a portfolio, came to the office, knocked on the door, said I wanted to speak to Jeremy Sturgess. And at that time, the receptionist said, "Okay, just give me a second." Jeremy came out a few minutes later, and I said, I want to work here. And he said, do you know any 3D work? And at that time, because of some of my SAIT experience, ultimately I had some computer knowledge. And because at Dal, we really didn't work on the computers that much. Everything was pretty much hand drawn. And I said, yep. And he said, okay, you can start Monday. And so the history begins at this office. So this is a picture of my house. I live in Hillhurst on Westmount Road, built in 1911. So do the math. Pretty old house. We moved into this house in 2007, gutted it and renovated it, and now we're raising 2 boys in it. these two boys. You know, I mentioned earlier, we love the lake, we love the water. This is actually a picture of us in Grand Cayman. And I bring it up because we go there every year, primarily because my wife's sister lives there, and she's lived there for 20 odd years. And so it's a good excuse to get down there. You know, we spend a few weeks in the summer in Nelson. We spend usually a month or so, typically in the winter in Grand Cayman. You know, growing up on the water, it's true to me. Also, one of the reasons why it's pretty near and dear to my heart is because I married this woman there. We had a pretty amazing wedding. That was May 10th, 2013. And Paul mentioned we played some hockey together. The note I read was about some intramural hockey at SAIT. This is actually some men's hockey where, just like when we were the Brewers and we were a dynasty, we were winning championships in men's league, and you know, again, many of these guys become great friends and great colleagues throughout your life. And that segues into this. I coach my oldest son hockey. He's 6 now, and so he's just in Timbix. My youngest son, who's now 4. This picture was taken last winter, so he was 3 at the time. I have a striking suspicion he's going to be a better skater than my oldest son. He's already got the knack, but it's great fun. And see those skates on the little guy? Those are the ones that I was wearing. And so let's segue into, you know, I've been talking for 17-ish minutes or so. Segue into who is SA. First and foremost, I would say SA is not one person. SA is not a figurehead. I am not SA. We are SA. And it takes a team to run an office. Not one person can do anything. And without my team, without us as a group, we couldn't achieve what we do. And it's key to our success. You know, there's some words that we often talk about about our office and what we do, you know, in the notion of who is SA. And our office was founded over 4 decades ago. Interesting story. I was born in 1977. Jeremy Sturgess founded the firm in 1977. Coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. And so, you know, I think what stands us apart is we have a known track record for our diverse scales of work. And, you know, we're a collection of architects, technologists, designers, all of our distinct backgrounds, I would say, enable adaptability and really empower possibility. And what I mean by that is, you know, our studio, we lead with creativity that is expansively imaginative, yet we are meticulously thoughtful about what we do. And you know, we pride ourselves in our ability to collaborate and our ability to, you know, merge the talents that our team have and share that with a vision of what it is that we do. And we often refer to this. This is our mantra. This is who we are. This is what we do. To us, it is more than architecture. We are here to create extraordinary environments that elevate the everyday. If we're not doing that, we're not successful at the work that we do. So, what is the work that we do? Well, I'm going to run you through some of our past work, and then I'll take you through some of our new stuff that might not be on our website or on the books, and some of you might not have seen before. Arguably, our most iconic project to date, from a visual perspective and powerful perspective, is Glacier Skywalk. You know, it's while it's, you know, this 30-meter cantilever off the side of a mountain face that's 280 meters in the air. That's a glass floor, which is extremely powerful in itself. It is so much more than that. It's actually cultural and interpretive and learning piece of architecture. And what I mean by that is there's a series of interpretive nodes along the kind of 450-meter journey that that ultimately culminates in the glass floor cantilevered above the gorge. But that interpretive notion talks about the geological evolution, the animal migration, and perhaps most important, and the reason Glacier Skywalk exists is because of the receding glaciers that we are currently going through, and the challenges we have with our receding glaciers. Another project, which is a cultural work, an extremely modest budget that we worked on. This is the Art Gallery of St. Albert, a heritage building. Used to be a bank 100-ish years ago, and it was adapted into an art gallery. And they approached us. It was actually about we worked with the Art Gallery of St. Albert for almost 10 years before the project actually came to fruition. And so we did a modest addition where they can actually house some significant art. It was also a barrier-free edition. Formerly, a historic building doesn't often have universal access, and that was part of the mandate for this. And so you get to see these really create opportunities for subtle moments of contrast. We're using this sort of raw steel as an expression of art in itself, as behind the backdrop that is the walls. Another cultural project, which you may or may not know, is here in Calgary, the Grand Theatre. Another historic building. We really took a sensitive approach to this, almost an archaeological approach to how we uncover what used to be here. When we first started to work on this project, it was actually a golf driving range, and we started to peel back the layers and start to bring it back to what it once was, and recognize the history. And it's a really special project to this office. One that you might know, the 7th Ave LRT. Prior to us working on the 7th Ave LRT, the stations were low, were dark. 7th Avenue was arguably a pretty dreary place to be. And when we came along, we wanted to tie the sidewalks into the adjacent buildings. We wanted to capture what is arguably Calgary's greatest asset, sunlight. We get a lot of it here. And so we have these big, tall canopies that are open to the sky that embrace our natural light. A project here, we started to talk a little bit about some multifamily stuff. This is a project that we did. Wow, we're pushing 26-ish, 27 years ago now. A project that started a thesis that we've continued to work on until this day, and will continue to work on, and it's courtyard housing. This is Canuck Gardens, and the notion of courtyard housing brings a lot of really positive attributes to the urban realm. And what I mean by that is, by eliminating in a typical double-loaded corridor, by eliminating the corridor, you provide pedestrian circulation outside or within a courtyard space that allows natural light to be on both sides of a building, which allows units to be narrower, which puts more doors on streets, which makes your streets safer. A very urban and sustainable initiative that we continue to promote throughout our history. Another project is Olive in Bridgeland. Similar idea with the courtyard, but I'm not showing you one here. This interesting to note in this particular project, when we were actually master planned the bridges, and at the time of the master plan, there was desire to have commercial retail units all along First Avenue, but at the time there wasn't enough density to support it, and so we proposed putting live work units along First Avenue as a mediator between what would be larger scale density that slowly mediates down to the kind of single family residential. At that time, live work did not exist in the Calgary land use bylaw. And so we helped the city rewrite the bylaw to incorporate that. Another project, this is in just south of 17th Ave, Lower Mount Royal, another courtyard project called The Block. A project in South Calgary called Glass. What you see here is what we're really proud of is we look at the history of the housing type, which arguably, in an infill world, there's a mixed use of housing type, but pre-infill world, there's a lot of, single family development. And yes, this is multifamily, but what we're trying to do is respect the cadence and the rhythm along the street that responds to the historical nature of the work, yet still reinterprets it in a new contemporary way. This project in particular, one thing that we do with a lot of our work, all of our work in fact, is we have a variety of unit types. And this particular project, there's 21 units in it, so it's a relatively small development, but 7 1-beds, 7 2-beds, 7 3-beds, a mixed demographic can live here, and that's what makes cities great. We can't gentrify. We need to have opportunity for everyone to live in our city. Other projects, types of projects that we do, you might recognize this. I just saw a post on Instagram the other day saying it's one of the most Instagrammable restaurants in the city. It's called Orchard. It just opened up not too long ago. Pretty lush. The client came to us with a concept in mind, and his concept was an overgrown cathedral. And so we took that and took a spin on it, and you see what you see here. And as much as we do larger scale work like transit work, like glacier skywalks, like multifamily, we also do single family housing. Single family housing, there's an intimacy that you work with, and specifically with clients when it comes to single family work. You really learn the ins and outs of how people live. Sometimes you might even be a marriage counselor, but who knows? But it's extremely powerful. This is a house that's in Mount Royal on Montreal Avenue. And what's really interesting about this house, beyond its formal expression, is we've actually nestled it, the bulk of the mass, behind the conifers that you see on the right hand of the screen, and shifted the alignment of the house to the east side of the property so that the west face has this big garden. And we here in Calgary want to capture as much southwest sun as we can, afternoon sun, and so we opened it up to a garden. And the image on the right is a wall of glazing west facing that opens up into the garden. One thing that's important to us is designing volume and space. Architecture is very much about that. Architecture is not a 2D realm, and experiential notion of volume and space is key to some of the success of our work. Other houses we've done, this is a house on Kootenay Lake, clearly fairly large, but nonetheless a house on Kootenay Lake with amazing views of the lake. It's almost like a ship on the water when you're sitting on the balcony or in the bedrooms above, experiencing the lake. We also do houses. This is a house on the bench, Naramata Bench. So this is in Naramata. I always admire this elevation, and just for its pure clarity in its expression. The house sitting on top of the foundation, and it has distant views to the lake. It's also hanging over part of a gorge below. Again, pretty powerful in terms of how we respond to clients' needs. And the reason I say that is because architecture can only exist with two things. And anyone that says otherwise, we can talk later. But the two things are client and a site. If you don't have either of them, you don't have architecture. And so, in our particular case, we're looking at the client, site and client, that is Calgary. one of the projects that we're currently working on is the Green Line. Arguably, when the Green Line's completely built out, it'll be plus or minus 28 stations with 46 kilometers of track. So arguably our client is the entire city, or 1.5 million people, if you will. And what do we need to do? We need to really use this as a city shaping initiative to create and offer opportunities for Calgarians, transit users, visitors alike to the essential needs that everyone use, whether it's amenities, whether it's hospitals, grocery stores, et cetera. This is the largest infrastructure project that the city of Calgary has ever undertaken, and it is one of the most significant city shaping initiatives the city of Calgary has ever undertaken. And while there's a global and an idea of a conceptual design ethos from the very beginning of the line through the 46 kilometers of track, what we want to do through this project is introduce little moments of identity to each and all the stations. And what I mean by that is introduce transit plazas that are unique to place. And so, whether you're in the suburbs in the southeast, or you're in an established neighborhood of Inglewood, Ramsey, or whether you're downtown, or whether you're somewhere up Center Street, the notion of creating identity and creating place along the whole of the line will give unity, and also will give an idea of awareness and self-awareness, and communities to engage with what will become and continue to be this initiative that is the Green Line. Some other projects that are on the books right now. I'll talk a little bit about some multi and some other things that are, I think, relevant to where we are in the next, give or take, 8 minutes. It's a project not too far from my house, actually, about 4 doors down, in Hillhurst. Small 8-unit project. Again, the notion of putting doors on streets, responding to the cadence and the understanding of the historical context, but reintroducing it in a new way is key to what we do. A project in Winston Heights, a little bit larger, about 22 units, but still similar idea behind the process. The glass project, the orange one that you saw earlier, we use that as in some ways as a baseline to help influence how we're working on this particular project. A larger scale project. This is in Bridgeland. It's called Steps. This elevation is actually the north elevation, which overlooks McDougall Park, so the park to the north. And what you see here is really a much more planar elevation. And the reason we're doing that is because it's north facing, and we want to get the facade as close to the north as we can, so as not to have articulating ins and outs, and arguably when you're on the north side of a building, having, let's say, balconies in shadow is not necessarily the most appealing thing to have. So if we can get the glazing faces close to the park, you get these expansive park views. But contrary to that, when you speak to other elevations along the building, whether it be the south elevation or west or east, we have a south facing courtyard that penetrates deep into the building, and the west and east facades are much more articulated so as to really provide that understanding. And while this building is 6 stories tall, we're really addressing at the street level, at the urban level, to really promote the notion of walkable streets and engaged townhouses and engaged buildings that activate an urban edge. So a couple of houses. This is actually a house for our founder, Jeremy Sturgess, and his wife, Leslie. They have moved to Victoria, or actually Oak Bay. And so we're doing a really subtle renovation to a 100-plus-year-old cottage. And while yes, this is contemporary in nature, the context in which it sits is really sensitive to its neighbors. We're recladding it. Interesting enough, the house was currently, you know, wrapped in stucco, and when we started to peel some of the layers, we realized that it was originally clad in shingles. And so, looking back to its historic context, we're actually recladding them in shingles, but in a contemporary way. Another house, this is a house in Mexico, and I talk about context, particularly in Mazatlan. There's a lot of expressive use of color in their culture, and so let's create an opportunity to be contextually responsive. Obviously, this is bold and some might say beautiful, if you will, but very expressive in nature, with views to the ocean beyond. This house is the third house we've done for this particular client, and this house will be a passive house. And so what's really interesting, she came to us essentially saying, you know, I want a passive house, and do you guys have experience doing it? And of course we say yes. You know, everything we do is sustainable in nature, given the notion of how we approach architecture. But you know, the key to her drives were climate stability, and so we start to look at things like in this particular section, you can see through the poche of the walls how thick some of those walls and roofs are. At a minimum, we're getting R42, but typically we're around R50. And so what's crazy is when we were in the depths of cold in February, when we were minus 30, the temperature constant in that house, we're almost completed construction now. In fact, we are completed on the interior. Landscape isn't done, so she's moved in. It was so constant. It was incredible. One thing you see here in the section is the house is in the east-west axis, and so you see the clear story, which is south-facing, to capture south light and bring it down through the open to below space into the main floor. And you know, there's ways of moving through the architecture as a means to really understand where you are within the house. Some notions that are truly relevant to what we do now is what we've worked on a little bit. We actually designed 6 of them, and we dubbed them as the office retreat, given the nature of COVID and how most, if not all of us, are working from home or working remotely. There was this growing challenge, or some might say, you know, the lines become blurred of what is home and what is office, or what is home and what is school. And when they blur, what used to be, and I'll speak to the office extent, what used to be a much more formalized idea of routine, where perhaps you know that you associate the office with something a little more formal or a little more rigor, whereas home is something associated to something that might be a little more comfortable, meaning, you know, you might hang out in your sweatpants and on your couch kind of scenario. Those lines become blurred, and so we took it a stab in the office to how might we use the experiences that COVID has brought upon us, or forced upon us, if you will, and design something that might be useful in the future, currently and in the future. And so we implemented some pretty strict rules, and meaning, let's design an office retreat, if you will. An office doesn't necessarily need to be office, but any sort of work related, where it doesn't need a development permit. So you can't exceed essentially 10 square meters to do so. And so here's an example of a garden studio, one that took the traditional sort of greenhouse and built upon it. Another example is what we sort of are dubbing cloud shed, where the walls we've created these light scoops to capture natural light, but the walls are internally focused. And in this particular case, there's programming for, you know, desk, bench, there's even compostable toilet and that sort of stuff in here. And another one, which is less about perhaps the office, but more about a kind of dichotomy of work and play, called niche, one where it could be could be a yoga studio, it could be an office, it could be a play space, but all of which are easily adapted to your backyard. And that's the key. You know, if some of us are bursting at the seams, so to speak, in our house or our, whatever it might be, an opportunity to create something like this got us as an office to think about how we might respond to our everyday living. And finally, I'm going to talk just about one particular project that we've been working on for a few years now. It's called Flyover Canada. And this project is, you can sort of see here, in Canada's busiest plaza, the heart of the entertainment district in Toronto, between the CN Tower and Rogers Centre. And it is similar client that we did Glacier Skywalk with, but this is in fact a building designed to house a flying theater. But given the nature of the location and the prominence of the site, we needed to design a building that responds accordingly. And while we are surrounded in monumental architecture, that is the Sky Dome, that is the CN Tower, we wanted to introduce an architecture that juxtaposes it in a way through its materiality and its expression. And we're doing so in a lot of different ways. But one thing that's key to the success of this building is this glazed wall here. It is our metaphor to what is our living room window. And so what I mean by that is, for those who are within the building and those who are within the plaza, there's a dialogue between the two, almost your front porch looking over top of the street. And so for those who are within the building and who are about to go on this guest journey of flight over Canada, you experience what is happening outside. Plus you're experiencing the anticipation before getting into the attraction and going through this flying theater. And you can start to see how that dialogue works between those who are about to enter the theater and those who are within the plaza, a real sort of interplay between the two. And finally, I'm going to leave you with this. No matter where you come from, if you're a kid rocking a Sergio Valente shirt and going to his first Bon Jovi concert in 1987 from a small town or a small city in Nelson, or if you're from a big city, or if you're from a farm or wherever you might be from, sky's the limits. Possibilities are endless. Love what you do, be passionate about what you do. And if you follow that, you follow your heart, you follow your dreams, success comes easily, and success is not money. I started this presentation by talking about being a father and a husband, and that's success. So thank you.
I will just do a quick clap on behalf of everybody. Thank you very much, Kevin. I think it's fair to say that I am truly, truly inspired by your story, your work, and where you've ended up. I know a lot of us students are kind of uncertain about the future, with COVID and all that, but hearing someone like you speak definitely, gave us hope to what's out there and in our futures and what we can do and get out of this. So thank you very much once again.
My pleasure.
What we'll do now is we can open it up to the floor. If anybody has any questions, feel free to use the Q&A tab, and we'll kind of just sort through the questions there. I'll start with Tears' question. Kevin, which programs were used to create these graphics?
For the most part, we work from 3D modeling perspective. We work in Rhino. Rhino and Enscape does a lot of it, but there's a lot of post-production. There's a lot of Photoshop afterwards. Pre-Rhino and Enscape, a lot of SketchUp and that sort of thing. But Rhino is the way of the world now from a kind of 3D perspective. Most of our drawings are done in Revit, but these graphics are primarily, as I say, Rhino and Enscape from a render perspective. we'll use Illustrator and that sort of thing for other graphics, but and lots of post-production in Photoshop.
Gotcha. Perfect. We've got another question from Tim Nickel. What types of clientele do you most frequently cater to?
I think I started off by saying how diverse our scale of work is. And so the type of clientele is just as diverse. And from, a custom single family residence to, a world-class cultural attraction. I think what is true to all of it is the architecture that we do, and we're responsible for architecture that endures. And so every client is different. Every client has a different background. Every client has a different need. And so there's not a typical, and I can honestly say that every single client is different. And that's what's great about it, because, it's our responsibility to really approach every client and every project with a sort of radically tailored lens that leaves kind of, an exploratory process that leaves no stone unturned. That's, I really get excited about that. And if I had the same client over and over again, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't be excited, but I love the challenges. We love the challenges of meeting new clients and doing new work.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kevin. We've got another question from Ashley. What is the working environment at Sturgess Architecture? Obviously, you enjoy working there, but why?
Well, obviously, with the nature of COVID and the pandemic that we're in, the working at the office is challenged right now. But notwithstanding, I would say the best thing about our office is the culture that we create. Yes, we do great work. And yes, a lot of that work draws people to want to work at our office, but it's the culture that we create that keeps them. And so, it's interesting. One of my senior associates, when years ago, I hired her, interviewed her, and I said, this is going to be the best place you're ever going to work at. And after I hired her, a couple of years later, she left to lots of different reasons, but she left. And during her exit with the rest of the staff, she said that, well, Kevin told her that it was going to be the best place she's ever going to work at, and she thought to herself, who is this guy? What kind of ego does he have? And the fact of the matter is, she said it was. And she came back, a year plus later, and she's been here ever since. And she's a senior associate at the office. And so the reason I say that is, what we want to do is empower our people to do great work. And I think that's part of the culture.
Thank you, Kevin. Maybe we'll just do 2 more questions here before we move over to the networking portion. I'm just going to go ahead and take the top 2 questions in the Q&A tab here. The first one is from Raul. How did you feel building in Mexico? It is a totally different experience, construction, standards, and people. And I did see another question from Shay that's kind of along the similar vein. Shay asks, speaking of context, how does it influence your design process? So I think maybe Kevin, would you mind answering those together?
Sure. So the fortunate thing is we've done a couple of places down in Mexico, and the first house was for our founder, Jeremy Sturgess, his sister actually, and they live in Mexico 6 months of the year, so they're fully immersed in the culture, and they know it well, and they have a lot of building experience, and so we utilized them as the sounding board, and as, in some ways, not necessarily the mediator, but the conduit to work through to help establish that. So that really helped the process. Yes, building techniques are different. Often things are, mañana, and so, that can be challenging, but nonetheless, it's still an experience in itself. And because we had, some of that local support to be the conduit, it really helps smooth the transition. And in terms of the notion of context, whenever we are looking at a project, I started by talking about two things, client and a site. Well, site is driven by context. And whether it's the context that you see on the screen here, monumental architecture such as the Sky Dome or such as CN Tower, and we're actually juxtaposing it, or we're in contrast of it, or whether it's local context within established neighborhoods in our city and how we draw upon what might be the history of the city or history of developments that existed around there. We use those as starting points and drivers behind how we might then respond with our architecture. And it could simply be a notion of a height comparison. It could simply be, this was a beautiful historic form, and so let's take that idea of a form and manipulate it in a way that responds in its, in 2021, not 100 years ago or whatever it might be. Or, there was this amazing materiality that existed and tactile quality to context that surrounds you. And so we start to explore in materials, or we start to explore in form. And so how does it influence? Huge. We don't come to a project with some pre-established notion of what a building or what a project might be. It responds to the context. And while some might think, this is extremely contemporary in nature, there's still contextual response, and there has to be.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for all your wisdom, Kevin. On behalf of myself, the students, faculty, everybody involved, thank you for your time. And that will conclude the keynote. What I'll do now is I'll pass it over to Patricia Tejada, who will just share a couple of updates for us before we get into the networking. But thank you once again, Kevin.
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, Kevin, for presenting us your insight, as well as sharing your experience in the field and how you became a part of Sturgess Architectures, and sharing us notable projects of SA and how it impacts our environment and urban landscape positively. I personally know a lot of my peers that aspire to pursue architecture at a higher level, and I think the presentation gave our audience an option on what to pursue after we finish this program. So again, welcome everyone to Industry Night or afternoon. Before we start the networking segment of the event, I would like to brief everyone on the basics of using Remo. As Jose had said earlier, we want everyone to follow house rules, such as not staying at a table too long. Remo is the first web video platform that allows people to have face-to-face networking online, just like in-person events that build meaningful relationships and conversations. Kindly turn on your camera and mic to interact with others. You can turn on tile view to see others on your table. And if you click back to the map, it takes you back to the floor plan. So you should be able to see it. There should be a bar that would make all those options visible to you later on. If you click on a person's avatar, if they have connected their LinkedIn, you can see their name, their profile, or the company they work for. You can privately message them as well. If you want to add your own LinkedIn profile, click on yourself and click on Connect LinkedIn Profile. After you click that, it'll prompt you to log in on LinkedIn to connect that information to Remo. There is a chat function located on the bottom bar as well between the mic and the share screen icon later on. There's a general chat that allows you to speak to everyone. I think everyone is familiar. I see a lot of activity in the chat. There is also a table chat that allows you to speak to just the people in the table that you are active in, and a private chat feature. So turn on your camera, turn on your microphone, double click on a table, and find someone to chat with. All right.
Into that, I'll just reiterate level 1. So you'll notice that there's multiple floors. Level 1 is primarily for our industry network, industry contacts. You'll see their tables labeled there. And level 2 is more of a casual sort of floor, where if you are a faculty and you want to connect with other industry or have discussions not related to, I guess, or unrelated, you're welcome to go up to level 2. I've also set up a few themed tables. So the beauty of Remo is that we can actually share our screen and pull up a whiteboard. So if anybody wants to kind of share any works, projects, etc., feel free to take advantage of those features. So without further ado, I'll let Patty bring us into the networking portion.